Well, welcome back, fourth graders of Seneca County. Appreciate you joining us here for our final session of our 2020 Ohio Heritage School Days here live at the American Civil War Museum of Ohio here in downtown Tiffin, Ohio. We've talked a lot about our history and our heritage in this Seneca County, Ohio area of the United States of America. Lastly, we're going to wrap up and bring it together. I think a time or a topic that's very appropriate for the year 2020. We're going to talk about women's suffrage and the right to vote. We're going to have Miss Brenda Stultz here today to talk about Louisa Fast and the League of Women Voters and the impact that Tiffin-Seneca County had on the rights of women to vote in our country and our rights as citizens to vote. So, Brenda,
thank you very much. Thank you. I also think it's appropriate that I've just followed the presentation that you may have had a chance to watch, where Mr. and Mrs. Gary Dundore had you vote on items of interest that our early pioneers would have used. So I'd like to talk with you today about how there was a time when women did not have the right to vote. And while we're all worried about 2020 being a year that we don't especially like everything going on, we also have celebrations. And one is the celebration of the passage of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, and that was 100 years ago. So celebrating the centennial of that, and also the centennial of the League of Women Voters. Before the ratification where all the states guaranteed the right for women to vote, Ohio had been a leader, because in June of the previous year, 1919, Ohio did pass an amendment to allow women to vote. Let's backtrack a little bit in our timeline to when the 14th Amendment was passed, and that actually allowed white men to vote, but still no women. And then just after the Civil War, the 15th Amendment was passed, and that meant that no one could be, other than women, could be denied the right to vote based on their color or that they were previous slaves, but still no women. But then in 1920, we have a mother to thank, and a young representative from Tennessee who listened to his mother. His mother wrote him a little note when it was time to vote, and she said, "Harry, be a good boy, vote for ratification." So that's why we're able to celebrate our right to vote today. All the way back on our timeline was the first Women's Rights Convention, which was held in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. And that's when Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and she's shown in this picture, and Lucretia Mott actually spoke on behalf of women's suffrage and came up with a list of items called the Declaration of Sentiments. This picture of Elizabeth Cady Stanton is actually with Susan B. Anthony, which you may read about in school also. She came on board a little bit later. Actually, Elizabeth Stanton was in Tiffin at one time, but she didn't have a very big audience. The second Women's Rights Convention was actually held in Ohio, but again, there weren't that many people that attended. Now, what was really odd, or what's funny to me, it might be to you, is that even though women could not vote for a POTUS, President of the United States, they actually could run to be the President of the United States. And again, a woman from Ohio, Victoria Woodall, actually did run for president, and her VP running mate was Frederick Douglass, the abolitionist, who I'm sure you're going to read about in school. Why did women want the right to vote? Well, they came up with posters in those days. They didn't have internet or Facebook or anything, and here's one. They called these posters broadsides, probably because they're broad and they didn't have like big banners outside yet. So they came up with these posters. This one is called the 12 Reasons Why Women Should Vote. Let's talk about at least the first 4. Number 1, why should women vote? Because those who obey laws should also help to choose those who make laws. Number 2, why should women be allowed to vote? Because laws affect women as much as they affect men. Number 3, because laws which affect women are now passed without consulting them. They have no voice. Number 4, because laws affecting children should include a woman's point of view. Just like Harry Burns' mother suggested that he vote for the ratification. All the way down, there's lots of good ones here, but the last one I think is also important. It just says, why women should vote? Because to sum it all up, all the reasons in one, it is for the good, the common good of all. Do you agree with that? I do. Just as you have colors for your school, I know Columbia and Tiffin City schools, you're blue and gold. There's green and white, all colors. The league or the suffrage women also needed colors to represent their quest. So we have a flag here that the League of Women the suffragists and the suffragettes actually carried in their parades and whatnot. Purple stood for loyalty. The white here is for purity, and the gold is for liberty. So, and then after the states ratified, they added a star as each one came on. So Ohio would have received that star in 1919, and that 36th star from Tennessee would have been added to the flag in 1920. While we're talking about all the women who were called the suffragists, were those who believed in peaceful demonstrations and parades and things. The suffragettes were those who were a little more radical, and they led protests. They even got arrested. There was some that were put in jail. They went on hunger strikes. I mean, this was an awful struggle for women to gain the right. And all the time this was going on, black women were also included, but they weren't quite as equal, because in the parades and things, they were asked to march at the back of the lines. There was a gentleman in Tiffin, William Harvey Gibson, who was very outspoken toward the women not getting the right to vote, and he was involved with what we called the Christian Women's Temperance Union. And those women believed that drinking and attending bars or saloons at the time, as they were called, was a bad thing to do. And that if the men were spending their time in the bars and drinking, they wouldn't be looking after their family. That drinking was against family values. So that particular group of people, or the men in particular, believed that if women received the right to vote, they wouldn't be able to have a drink anymore. So William Harvey Gibson, who you may see his statue in front of our Justice Center, he held these rallies or meetings to say, no, we don't want to give women the right to vote. Lots of anti-women ads. Let the women stay home and look after the babies and do the washing and the dishes and whatnot. They don't need to be involved in important matters of government. What else? Another relationship we have to the organization of the suffragists is a woman named Carrie Chapman Catt. And I have a book here that I'd like to share with you that I borrowed from the Tiffin-Seneca Public Library. This particular one is in the junior section, and it's by Kristen Thonis Keller. I don't know if you can see the book very well, but Carrie Chapman Catt was actually the 3rd president of the National American Suffrage Association. She was also the 1st president of the International Women's Suffrage Alliance. She believed that women could vote, but if they were to vote, they should become informed voters. And so just before the amendment passed in 1920, she founded the League of Women Voters. Now, why are we talking about Carrie Chapman? She was actually from Wisconsin, not from Ohio. It's because we have a lady from Tiffin who became friendly with Carrie Chapman Catt and worked with the League of Women Voters. Some people have called her as Tiffin's First Lady, and her name was Louisa Fast. Now this is a picture of Louisa as a young woman. I think this particular picture I also got from the Tiffin-Seneca Public Library. The URL is ohiomemory.org. You might use that in your school classrooms. There's a lot of primary source documents on there and secondary source documents too. But this is Louisa as a young woman. Louisa, actually, kind of a sad story. She was orphaned as a very young child. Her father had died before she was born, and her mother died when she was like 4 years old, and she was sent to Tiffin to live with her aunt and uncle. And her grandfather actually was Dr. Henry Kuhn. He was also the first mayor of Tiffin. And Louisa lived there with them on, I think it was Sandusky Street. I think the house might still be there. So you might take a look for that. But Louisa was a good student. She attended Smith College, and not all ladies at that time actually attended college. But she had a chance to work just after World War I. She worked in France, so she was familiar with going overseas. When she came back to Tiffin in 1920, she became acquainted with Carrie Chapman Catt and worked in the office of the League of Women Voters. Louisa helped establish 69 different League of Women Voter chapters, I guess they called them, in Ohio. And after that, she traveled all over the world, actually, because the suffrage was going on in other countries as well as in America. She was a speaker for peace, and she earned many honors here back in America too. Even Heidelberg College gave her an honorary degree. Louisa, this is an older picture of Louisa. She worked at the museum. I said, she was a librarian, but she lived until she was 101 years old, and certainly did a lot for the effort for suffrage. We talked all about women. So guys, men were involved in this fight too. We said that Frederick Douglass Early was an early supporter, but the actual president of the Tiffin area League of Women Voters today is a gentleman. So we can be thankful for all those who have come before us to give us this right. Such a struggle. We should take pride in our right to vote, and you as children should look forward to your right to vote. So that's about all I have, unless you have questions. Do you have any questions? Thank you for listening today.
Well, Mrs. Stultz, thank you very much for your time today. Great job talking about the women's suffrage movement.
Cheers.
Cheers, absolutely. And as we stated several times, can't underscore the importance of our voting, and what a great time to talk about that right that we have as Americans to vote. So we are close to wrapping up here today. I do thank you again, all of our participating school districts and fourth graders and teachers, technology coordinators at your school districts for making this possible, and thank you for allowing us to present with your students today. Before we leave, I do want to take one last moment to bring all of our participants that are still with us out for one more last screenshot to pass on our final thank yous for them for helping us make this a great success today.
I'm going there.
Where? Come on, don't be shy.
Are we off or what?
We're live.
I was gonna say, I'll come around.
I think we can.
Okay.
I'm gonna see if we're getting everybody in.
Back further.
Back further.
Okay. Was that Jim?
That's better. Now, move the camera, that way. Yep, that's it.
While they are finalizing the camera, I do want to thank our school districts, Tiffin City, Buckeye Central, Seneca East, Old Fort, Hopewell Loudon, Mohawk, New Riegel, and Bridges Academy, all participating either live or via the streaming option available to them later today or in the future. So we appreciate you for making this a great success today. I do want to thank all of the volunteers that helped put this event together as well as presenting today. I know I missed a couple thank yous earlier, so Jim, if you could help me out there.
Okay. We have behind the camera, Rodney Young, presenters, Mr. and Mrs. Dundore, Mrs. Stultz, our host, Eric Willman, Mrs. Williams, and Mrs. Smith, our musical entertainment for the day, Mr. Osborn from the Sharpshooters, and our moderator on the chat was Kyle von Kamp. Thank you all for joining us.
We hope to see you in person next year in 2021. It will be September 17th, 2021. Hope to see you there.